Hi everyone, today we're going to do this fairly simple sci-fi part in Moment of Inspiration. I'm assuming that you have watched my previous MoI tutorials or that you have some basic knowledge of MoI, because in this video I'm not going to explain how you can switch between viewports or navigate in the viewports, stuff like that. For this tutorial you need to know the basics of MoI to be able to follow along. You can download a project folder for this tutorial that contains a MoI file and the reference images, and when you open the Moment of Inspiration file, you should see the reference images in there. So let's jump right into MoI and start modeling this sci-fi part. So here we are in Moment of Inspiration, and you can see we have reference images in the top, front and right views. I have switched off the grid so we can see things a little bit better, and we can get started modeling right away. If you take a look at this object, you will notice that the basic shape is symmetrical top to bottom and left to right. The holes, on the other hand, are only symmetrical top to bottom. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to create the base and add those holes at the top at the end. Let's switch to the right view. And I'm going to start this with a solid. You could also start this with a curve. There's a number of ways you can do that, but we're going to use a solid object as a starting point. So I'm going to create a box, and I'll use a box from corners, and I'm going to left click on the axis here. Please note that I have straight snap and object snap switched on. So let's left click and create the first point here, and let's move over to this side and create the second reference point here, and then I'm going to switch to the top view, and you can drag this out to either side. I'm going to drag it over to here, left click, and there's our basic box. Next I'm going to select this box, select this edge, go to my front view, and I want to fillet this. And let's try an offset of 1, which is a bit much. Let's try 0.8, 0.6. So that looks about right. I'll just right click and confirm that. And next I'm going to select the object, then select these edges. And under the Construct tab, I'm going to use an offset. And I'm going to switch that to round corners. Everything else I'm going to leave at the default. And let's offset this curve to here. And then we can select the object, select the curve, and do a Boolean merge. Then select the part here at the bottom and delete both this cutout piece and the curve. So now we have something like this. And next we're going to create this foot piece, and for this I'm going to use a curve. So let's grab a polyline, and we're going to combine these two objects later using a Boolean union, and it's important that all of the edges and points line up perfectly, otherwise there could be trouble down the road. And what I mean by that is that filleting won't work, or there may be other issues. So in this case we do want to be very precise. So I'm going to snap to this point on our first object here, then snap to the grid line down here, and I'll create the next point over here. And if you don't want to eyeball this, sometimes it's a bit difficult to place these points because of these rounded corners, you can always create construction lines. And what we could do here, for example, is hold down the left mouse button and drag to create a construction line here, and we could create another one over here if we wanted to. And now we can snap to these intersections here of the construction lines and create our points. Over here I'm going to do the same thing. I'll snap to this point, hold down my left mouse button and drag to create a construction line, and then we can snap to the intersection of these two construction lines and create a point. And let's add another one here and close that curve. Let's go to the top view, select that curve and move it straight over and line it up with the edge here. And then we're going to use extrude and extrude this curve out to about here. And it looks like something went wrong because you can see the edges are not matching up here. So let's see if we can fix that. I'll just go back a few steps, go back to my right view, show the points of this curve. And it looks like I just moved the entire curve a little bit by accident. So I'll just select it and drag it over and snap it to here. So let's go back to the top view. Again, extrude this, and that looks a lot better. We could have filleted the corners on this curve, but when I ran some tests before recording this tutorial, what happened was that after I had extruded the filleted curve, sometimes the Boolean union wouldn't work. Sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. In any case, it always worked with this straight curve here, so that's why I'm using that, and we're going to fillet the edges or corners later. We can now delete this curve, select both of these objects and do a Boolean union. So far so good, we're getting a solid, and now we can start filleting some of the corners. I'll start with this one down here. Let's go back to the front view and I'll use fillet again. Let's try 0.3, 0.25, and that's close enough. So right click to confirm, select the object, go to edge mode by selecting one of the edges here, and then I'm just going to drag a marquee selection around these edges, and then I'm going to hold down Control and do the same thing to deselect these ones. So now we only have this corner edge here selected. So let's go ahead and fillet this edge. Let's do 0.5, and I think that looks good. So right click to confirm that. Next I'm going to fillet these edges here. In the right view you can see the curvature here, so let's go ahead and apply a small fillet. Let's try 0.1, and that's looking good. Again, right click to confirm that, and we're almost done. What we still need to do is fillet these edges here at the front. I'm going to do this in the top view. Let's try 0.3, and 0.3 looks fine. So right click to confirm that. Select the entire object, and it's a solid. Let's just try and fillet everything. And the radius is a bit big. Let's try 0.1. And it looks like everything's working fine. So that's good. I'll just hit escape. And there's one more detail I want to add, and that is this hole here. And for this I'm going to start with a circle. Let's use a diameter or diameter circle. Move it into position. Control drag a copy like this. And then I'm going to use a rectangle using the 3-point option, and I can snap the first point to this point over here, the second point to here, and the third point to this point down here. Now let's select all three curves, go to edit, and let's trim these with the default settings. I'm just going to right click twice to confirm, and then select these parts and delete them. Select these 4 curves, and use join to create a single curve here. And in order to get rid of the corner points, I'm going to rebuild that curve. It's not really necessary in this case. But if I select one of these points, if I use Alt-Q to switch to isolate mode, you can see we have a sharp corner here. If I go back and just isolate that curve again and use the rebuild option, you can do that either by using a shortcut. For me, that is the plus key, and the command is rebuild. You can also hit tab in the viewport and enter rebuild down here. Right click to confirm that, and now if I drag out one of these points, you can see we have a soft curve and no corner points. Let's switch off those points again. I'll just select both of these objects and do a Boolean merge. Then select this part here, delete both the part and the curve, and we have something like this. So now this basic shape is finished, and we can select it and mirror it over to the top and to the left. So let's go ahead and go to the Transform tab, use Mirror to mirror this up to here. Select both of these objects, go to Construct and do a Boolean union. Select the object and mirror this over to the other side, and again let's do a Boolean union. Okay, so this looks fine. What you could do if you wanted to is fix some of the edges. It's not really necessary in this case, but you can see we have two edges instead of one over here and also on the other side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select one of these edges and just marquee select all of these, hit tab, and I'm going to enter merge to merge these edges into single edges. So now if I select this, I only have one edge. That's sometimes helpful because having multiple edges can also cause problems when filleting. On this object though, we could have left things as they are. And of course we have the same situation on the other side over here. We could leave it or we could fix it. I'll just create a straight line like this. Select both of the objects, do a Boolean merge, delete this part, select this one and just mirror it over, select both and do a Boolean union. And now we have clean geometry over here as well. And I think now would be a good time to fillet the edges. And in this case, it's the easiest thing to do is to just select the entire object and run the fillet command rather than trying to select the edges that you want to fillet, because chances are that loop selections will not work here. If you want to have a different fillet for these holes, I would apply these first before filleting the rest of the object, but I'm going to fillet everything with the same distance. So select the object, hit fillet, and I'm going to do maybe 0.1, and that's not really, oh, I have 1 instead of 0.1. So 0.1 is working, but it's too much. Let's try 0.05. And that looks good to me. Let's just check if everything is okay. And it looks like we're good. So I'm going to right click to confirm this. And that is our finished base shape here. Let's go ahead and name this. I'll call this a base shape, and I'm going to control drag a copy out here. And I'm going to rename this to base shape 2. And now that we've named these objects, they should both be available in the scene browser. We can switch off the base shape here. As a matter of fact, I'm going to switch off the other one too for now. Let's go to the top view and start creating those holes here. We're going to start with a triangle, and for this I'm going to use a polygon curve, and I'll use the one from edge, and we only need 3 sides. So let's create that, and we can either rotate this around and get the shape, or we can use the flip option here and just drag along this edge to get that shape. And let's go ahead and drag this to about here, and then I'll just move this up a little bit, and we need to fillet these corners. In this case I'm going to do all corners, so I'm just going to right click to confirm that, and let's try a radius of 1.7, and 0.7 looks good. I'm going to keep that. I'll just line this up a little bit better with the reference image. It's not totally accurate, but that's fine. Let's go ahead and mirror this over to the other side. We need object snap, and let's put this here, and I'm going to control drag to create a copy of this one. Select this curve, go to transform, move, and with object snap switched on, I can now snap to various points on this curve. I'm going to snap to the midpoint here, and then just move it to the center of the grid. And now we can select all 3 of these curves, drag out a copy. Let's go to the front view and rotate these around 180 degrees. Let's undo that. We need to select these ones. Okay. Let's just do that again. So 180 degrees is what we need. Let's go back to the top view, and I'll just move these over and line them up with our reference image, something like this, and we can delete this one. Let's select all of these curves and our base object, and I'll do a Boolean merge, and then we can select these parts including the curves and just delete them. And there's our first holes. Let's go ahead and fillet these, and in this case loop selection should work, so I'm only going to select 2 edges at the top and at the bottom of each of these holes. And then I'm going to use a shortcut to create the loop selections. For me that is Shift L. I've posted a link to a text file with all of the shortcuts that I'm using, so you can use the same ones if you want to. You can define any key that you want, but you do need the script in the command line here. So for me the shortcut is Shift L. Let's go ahead and fillet these edges. Let's try 0.05, and that's fine. 0.07, right click to confirm that, and I'm going to hide that base shape again, go back to my top view, and let's start creating maybe this cutout here. And for this I'm going to use a polyline, and like before you can eyeball things or you can create construction lines before you create that curve. And now I can just left click to create my first point, maybe at this intersection, and now I only need to snap to all of these intersections here and close that curve. And we need to fillet this. I'll start with these 2 points here, and let's do a fillet of 0.15 maybe. Fillet again, let's use this point, and for this one I'm going to do 0.4. This one, let's try 0.2. That's close enough. And there's one more corner down here that we need to fillet. And I'll do 0.1 for this. Right click to confirm. And there we have our curve. Let's go ahead and mirror this over to the other side. Select both of these. And our base shape, I'll do another Boolean merge. Delete the parts that I don't need. And let's go ahead and fillet these right away. So I'll select these edges here, Shift L to do a loop selection. And let's do a fillet of 0.04. Okay, looks good to me. Right click to confirm that. I'm going to hide that object again, go back to my top view, and let's create our first circular hole, or the shape for it. And this one we can just mirror over to the other side, and I'm going to make a copy of this one, drag it to about here, scale this down a bit, and I'll make a copy of this one, scale this one down, make another copy, scale this down, and I'm going to use the mirror tool, and I'm going to use this point as my mirror point. So we have accurate distances between these points, unlike in the reference image. And we can select these 4 circles here and mirror these over to here. And let's make a copy of this one. And I'll use the move tool to snap it to the center line. And then I'll just move it over. And the size is just fine. Let's make a copy. And I'll scale this down. And use the mirror tool. Let's make another copy of this one, and I'll move it into position here. Let's make another copy. Scale this down a little bit. Again, copy this circle, move it into position here. Scale it down. And let's go ahead and mirror that. I'm going to select all 4 of these and mirror those over to here. So now we can select all of these circles and our base shape. Let's run a Boolean merge on these, and this will take a bit. And now we can select all of the parts that we don't need and get rid of those. Okay, looking good. So let's start filleting some edges here. I'll start with the big circles. And let's do 0.5. 0.05. Next I'm going to select these ones, and it looks like we need to delete this piece here first. I think I'll do the same fillet distance for these ones as well. Let's do 0.03 for these. And I forgot this one. And I also need to delete another part here. And now we can select these edges. Looks like I didn't fillet this hole here. Okay, so now let's grab the edges of the smallest holes. And I'll do 0.01 for these, maybe 0.02. Right click to confirm, and there we go. That is our finished shape here. And there's one more thing I would like to show you, something that I've learned recently in Moment of Inspiration. And what I'd like to show you is how we can bend this object. First of all, I'm going to make another copy here. And let's call this one base shape 3 bent, and I'm going to hide number 2. The way you can bend things in Moment of Inspiration is by using the flow command, and there's different ways you can use flow. I'm going to show you one of them, and what we're going to do is we're going to use curves to bend this object. So let's go to the right view, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a single line, and it should be about the same length as the object. So I'm going to left click once here, and then I'm going to create another point, maybe about here. Switch off object snap, and I'll move this curve down just below this object, something like this. And then we need another curve, and for the second curve I'm going to use a freeform through points, and I'll do something like this maybe. Right click to confirm that, and then I'm going to use the flow command. You can find that under the transform tab. If you click on deform, you have the flow option here, and the first thing we need to do is select the objects that we want to flow, and in this case it is our SciFi part here. So right click to confirm that, and next we need to select the base curve, and the base curve is the one up here, the straight line that we've created. And then we need to select the target curve, and it says we should select it near the matching end. So let's left click here, and this takes a bit to calculate, and there we go, we have our bent object. Now it's a bit stretched and it goes beyond this target curve here. What we can do to prevent that is use the stretch option. So just check this box and wait for a moment of inspiration to calculate, and there we go. Now we have the object bent exactly along the length of that curve. I'm going to delete the original object and the curves. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. Oh, do I need to do this again now? Okay, let's just go ahead and do that one more time. I think I forgot to hit the done button, and that's why everything disappeared. So now I've confirmed this, I can delete the original objects, and here we have our bent object. And in moment of inspiration, it's often easier to create flat or straight objects with all the details and then bend them, because if you try to model all of this into an already curved shape, that would be a lot more difficult. So this is the end of this tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.